All right, good morning, everybody. I saw this video today of a Christian apologist.
Moral teacher.
Let's
And
let's see how
But don't worry.
this guy,
Jesus,
he's upset that
we all know what we got
a leftist so-called pastor says that Jesus was a racist who repented. The thing is, this man then insults Jews and Judaism in his video where he's defending the racism of Jesus by saying, "Oh, it's just that he was acting like the Jews of his day." So let's just see
Brandon Robertson. In this
what this
video,
says.
Robertson
Let's make it a little louder.
An unusual claim.
It's not unusual. I've heard this before. Rabbi Victor Miller mentions it, who was not a leftist at all.
Did you know that there's a part of the Gospel of Mark where Jesus uses a racial slur? In Mark chapter 7, there's the account of the Syrophoenician woman, a woman who is Syrian and Greek, both of which there were strong biases against within the Jewish community. And she comes to ask Jesus to heal her daughter who's possessed by a demon.
Robertson begins with some background. Good start. Historical context is really important in properly understanding a historical event. Robertson says the Jewish community would have strong biases against this woman. He's right, and here's why.
No, he's not.
First, she's a she,
No.
a woman. And women were not highly regarded at that time.
Not true.
For her to even talk to a Jewish rabbi, Jesus, in public was a big no-no. Strike one.
No.
Second, she's a Gentile. That means she's not Jewish. Because the Jews were separated from the Gentiles by the laws of the Mosaic covenant, Gentiles were considered unclean.
No.
Strike two. Third, her daughter had a demon. And it doesn't get more unclean than having an unclean spirit. Strike three. So the fact that Jesus, a Jew, was interacting with this woman was scandalous to other Jews. But if you've read...
All right. So the truth is, let's look at what the Talmud actually says. Let's look at records of things that took place in that time, earlier and later, but around that general time of the Second Temple era, and what took place subsequently, after the Second Temple era. First of all, the Talmud records many stories of Jews interacting with Gentiles, interacting with women, and interacting with Gentile women, including rabbis, having conversations on philosophy and all matters, praying for them, helping them. These are recorded throughout the Talmud. Some of them were nobles, some of them were common people, but in any event, there is no concept that it was wrong, that women were low on the totem pole, but rather women, the Talmud says, in that day were a people unto themselves. They had their own culture. They were separate but equal. And there was obviously interaction between men and women, not only within the home, but also in general when needed. There was the Queen Salome, Shlomtzion Amalka, and who consulted with the sages, as well as Persian and Roman noblewomen and queens and so forth, who consulted with the rabbis as well. So this idea that because she was a woman and because she was a Gentile, there was no way to talk to her and this was scandalous somehow, it's just not true. And particularly, as long as you're talking in public, there's no reason to be scandalous about it. Meaning, if they were talking in private, there would be an issue of scandal. But to talk publicly, that there was a woman in need who wanted a prayer, we have examples of this all throughout the Talmud, or needed an exorcism or whatever it was. There is nothing abnormal about this. The other claim is that because she was a Gentile, she was unclean. The fact of the matter is, in Jewish law, only Israelites, only Jews can be unclean. There is no concept of a Gentile being unclean other than in the case of uncleanliness that's related to a Jew. That's the only, meaning there's no inherent spiritual pollution of a Gentile, only of a Jew. That's throughout the Talmud. And furthermore, the Talmud speaks out against racism. There's a story in the tractate Yuma, which tells a story of a high priest who made it out of the temple. Most of the high priests didn't, especially the sola scriptura forerunners of today's Protestants, which would be the Sadducees, which most of the priests were. And because they were unworthy, because they followed a false doctrine. And so God struck them down. But this one, I guess, was good enough to get out, but still, nonetheless, he was an arrogant person and somewhat of a racist. And the two greatest rabbis of the generation were there, who were the children of converts, or maybe themselves converts, and they were descended from Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, who exiled the 10 lost tribes, the northern kingdom. And their names were Shemaiah and Naphtali. And in the throng that was following the high priest home, Shemaiah and Naphtali were there too, showing honor to the office of the high priest. When the high priest saw that part of the crowd was gathering around these two great rabbis, Shemaiah and Naphtali, the high priest was somewhat embarrassed, particularly because of their pedigree. And he said, "Peace unto you, you children of heathens." He greeted them in a backhanded insult. And their answer to him was, "Better peace be unto us who are children of heathens, but who act like Aaron, than you, a son of Aaron, who does not act like Aaron." And so therefore we see that the Talmud rejects racism, welcomes converts of any race, whereas on the other hand, in this story, Jesus was saying, don't put the good bread to the dogs. He said a racial slur to this woman. Even if he was doing so in context, this was nonetheless, I don't, like we would say in Yiddish, fargin, I don't have a problem with this man who's apologist defending his own faith, but don't do so at the expense of mine. Meaning you don't have to insult Judaism and Jews in order to make your point about Christianity. So either way, it's one or the other. Either Jesus himself was the racist, or the author of this either wanted to, whether he wanted to paint Jesus as a racist or he wanted to paint the other Jews as racists. It's not borne out by our own records that date back to that time, even though they weren't committed to writing until maybe starting about 200 years later, but they were records of stories that took place. Certainly the story of Shemaiah and Naphtali is before the time of Jesus, that allegedly he lived. So therefore, we see that it wasn't some great reform that he brought to open the eyes of the Jews to welcome Gentile believers. Most of the feelings about Gentiles in the Jewish world were because of the persecution and because of the culture of the Romans that was antithetical to the Jewish values, which later became Judeo-Christian values. And later in history, Christianity turned around these pagan worlds into, even if they have theological issues, at least they started to have respect for human rights and so forth. And these were ideas that may have existed in other traditions as well, but for the most part, the world has them, not from Athens, not from Rome, but from Jerusalem. Because we know that the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, would discard babies, as did the Norse people and other and other peoples, they would abandon babies and have them die if they were unwanted, and that ideology was unheard of in the Judeo-Christian world. Or there's the story of the General Sir Charles Napier in India, who was a regional governor in India in the 1850s, I believe. And he told the Indian Brahmin priests that he's not looking to change their religion. He's not looking to convert them to Christianity. He respects their right to continue to practice Hinduism. However, when it comes to the practice, I believe it's called suti, of widow burning, similar to, I think, in the Japanese tradition of harikari, right, where a widow would, in the Japanese tradition, would commit suicide. An Indian tradition would be burned. She'd be thrown into fire, quite possibly against her will. Sir Charles Napier told the Hindu priests that I will respect your tradition of burning widows if you respect our tradition of hanging men who murder innocent widows. And since then, because of imperialism, these practices have disappeared for the most part from India and from other cultures. So I do certainly recognize the positive effect that Christianity has done in spreading some Jewish values of human rights that did not exist in the pagan world. But if you want to have your apologetics for your faith, which I respect your right to do that, I respectfully ask that you don't do so at our expense. Do so in a way, but this is a difficult one to answer because it's one or the other. It's either that whatever, if we, let's say we assume this to be a fictional account, we don't have to assume that anything in the so-called Gospels is historically accurate. But in any event, it's a record of what these authors believed about this man that they tell a story about named Jesus. And it's either that he's being presented as a racist, or the authors are teaching what could be called antisemitic. I don't like this term antisemitic. It's not really antisemitic. It's anti-Judaic, it's Judeophobic, meaning that Muslims don't speak of anti-Arab racism, but Islamophobia. I think we in the Jewish community should also stop using this term anti-Semitism, which racializes the Jewish identity. And then, of course, the Christian will say, well, they follow a Jew, so they don't have any racial anonymity against people of Jewish heritage, but rather an opposition to the Jewish theology or the Jewish ideology or the Jewish practices and so forth. If this were indeed true, you could say that, but it's not. Meaning we have the historical records. Now someone's going to ask, well, didn't Rabbi Shimon Yochai say that the best of the heathen should be killed? Again, he was talking not of Gentiles ethnically, but particularly the ideology of the pagan culture at the time, which was murderous, which had no respect for human rights. And it wasn't even a theological issue, although obviously had a very strong theological opposition to paganism. But the real issue was these issues of human rights, meaning that if these are people who murdered babies, they had blood on their hands, they were liable to the death penalty, they are murderers, and so they deserve death. Doesn't mean we are the ones who have to mete it out, but that they're guilty of the most egregious sins. And so for that reason, that is what, in context, what Rabbi Shimon was talking about. Not, it wasn't a racial statement, but rather and not even an ideological one or a theological one, but rather a social one, an issue of what might be called social justice, for lack of a better term. But if that culture could be changed, which certainly, for the most part, Christianity changed, although not totally, it's nonetheless there. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and that helps the algorithm to get these videos out. But I'm certainly happy that people on the right are opposing the people on the left, no matter what their religion is. And so I'm not opposed necessarily to this man in his work of apologetics. But before you make a statement, you have to be educated about what you're saying. And there's absolutely no idea that a woman or a Gentile or a Gentile woman were off limits in a public forum to ask a Jewish rabbi for a blessing, for an exorcism, for prayer, or even for advice. As long as it was a professional type of relationship, a pastoral type of relationship, that was, and it was, everything was conducted in public. There's no seclusion. There's no thing that would make someone suspect of anything immoral. There you have it. There's many stories like this of these interactions. It might not have been common, but it also was not scandalous. I mean, it's the same thing today in the most ultra-Orthodox communities. The only one that I ever knew that the rabbi would not speak to a woman outside of his family was the Vizhnitzer Rebbe from Muncie. His brother didn't have that custom, but the Vizhnitzer Rebbe from Muncie did. I don't know what his sons, maybe some of his sons have that and some don't. And Rabbi Tzvi Meir Zilberberg he's not a Rebbe, he's a preacher, you know. He's maybe even more strict about that, but that is an added stringency and not a normative thing, although it's certainly piety. I respect these great rabbis, the Vizhnitzer Rebbe Zechron V'Bracha, Reb Matula, and Reb Badal Chaim Tovim, Reb Tzvi Meir Zilberberg Shlita. I had the shaykhs with both of them, much more with Reb Tzvi Meir, but that doesn't mean that's something normative, and therefore there's nothing scandalous. Meaning, both the Satmar Rebbes will speak to women. They won't look at them in the face, maybe, out of respect. That's just the culture. But they will talk to them, pray for them, give them blessings, these types of things. There's nothing scandalous about that. Tosher Rebbe, all these other tzaddikim, that was always part of the, it's a totally normative thing. But they'll be there not alone. There'll be a secretary there. There'll be someone else there to just to be make sure that everything is appropriate, because out of respect. So that's the story. All right, I didn't mean for this to go on for 20 minutes, but like I said, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. Hit the like button, hit the bell button, all those buttons. Again, it helps the algorithm, because we'd like this channel to grow. I'm very thankful to Barney Shalom and to all of our visitors and viewers that this channel is growing. But you see, I'm talking about someone who has close to 42,000 subscribers, and I have less than 1,700. So obviously there's difference between the populations of Judaism and Christianity, but I'm trying to make myself maybe like a Jewish version of Fulton Sheen, who was popular outside of the Catholic circles. He was very popular with Jews, to be honest, and he had more popularity, he said, with Jews than with Protestants, and more popularity with Protestants than with Catholics. So that was Fulton Sheen, and if I'm not doing this to be famous, it's not like but I feel that it's a message that's to get out, particularly something like this. It's a truth issue. I want to get out the truth. I'm presenting. I should present like Mar McCoymus. I should show examples, but there are many, many examples. And maybe at some point we'll make another lesson where we can get more into this. I'll tell you another example of something that's been taken out of context. So there's this statement in the Talmud that a woman is chemes molitzoya. She's a tube filled with excrement, and it's based on scripture actually. And someone asked me, so isn't that misogynistic? And I said, no, it's really the same for a man or a woman. Meaning, if you have lust that's improper for someone who's not your spouse, this is a tool to try to overcome that lust. It's not necessarily guaranteed to work, but we should try. We should be cognizant of our, that we don't want to do things that are immoral. We want to keep things within marriage, ideally, the committed relationship, because it's just a better way to live. And so, as a means, so the same thing, a woman could think about a man like that. If their hormones overtake them, that could be a method to overcome that lust. And if a man is lusting after a woman, the same thing. It's not, because meaning the truth is the human body has excrement in it. It's not a statement particular about women. It's a statement about all human beings. But it's just, since most of the readers of the Talmud would be men, that's why it's mentioning a woman, and also because it's more common for men to run after women. Women, although they also have a strong sex drive, it has a different dynamic than the man, and so therefore that's also part of the reason for that. But again, it's nothing misogynistic about that. So essentially, these are the stories, what we're talking about here. A lot of things are taken out of context, so just the same. I know that this apologist here, I don't know if he's a pastor, I don't know if he even says what his name is, Robertson. No, Robertson is the other, but Mr. B is the name of the apologist. I guess Robertson is the other. It's not an unusual claim. I've seen this in many Jewish apologetic works in critique of Christianity. And the thing is, like John Hagee says, Christianity cannot exist without Judaism, but Judaism is very fine without Christianity. And also, John Hagee, again, he's an evangelical pastor. He says that the only theology that God ever created was Judaism. So obviously other Christians are going to disagree with that. But in any event, we see a very prominent pastor saying that it means something, right? Obviously he's not the Pope, but I would say he's an authoritative figure, at least for people in his congregation, right? And for a lot of people who are devotees of him. He's on television and so forth. He's getting a little older, his son took over, right? So this is the story. This is what so again, I respect his work in this Mr. B's work in apologetics for his faith, but it doesn't have to be, especially in the form like this, meaning you're talking about a book by Rabbi Victor Miller. It's not a public forum as much. Maybe, well, it's in English, so maybe it is a little bit more, but it's written in a Jewish style. So in other books of Jewish apologetics have brought this issue up. It's not an unusual claim at all. I've seen it brought up many times. Tovia Singer brings it out. Tovia Singer said no rabbi, and I think even Rabbi Bar Tzadok, who's very respectful to Christians, he brought this up also. No rabbi would say such a thing. It's not the way we speak. It's not refined, And so I think, though, I have to explain what a Pharisee is. Maybe we might have to make another video about that. But the term Pharisee, although the Sadducees used it as kind of a casual insult against the rabbis, against those who followed the traditions that came from Moses, that Jesus is quoted as saying, "Heed the scribes and Pharisees, for they sit in the seat of Moses." So, for a Christian, that should be, that should mean something, right? It's inconsequential for us, because to us, a statement from Jesus doesn't mean any more than a statement from Joseph Smith means to a Christian. And again, I know Mormons consider themselves Christians, but I'm just saying, like, most Christians don't consider Mormons Christians, to a Protestant or a Catholic or anyone else, So, again, it's almost a half hour. I'm going on and on, but that's the point that I'm bringing out. We can be respectful without, and so I guess we're guilty of the same thing, but he doesn't have. But we're going by what the text says. So one way or the other, like I said, if the text is presenting, which this Mr. B says, no, from the context we see that's not Jesus' belief. He's stating what he would assume, and a lot of Christian Bible commentators bring this up, that he's speaking in a manner that would be expected from a traditional Jew of that time, and then he takes it back, so to speak. It's not really the case, because what really it's saying is that that's what the author of this text is saying about the Jews, not what's borne out by the records that we have of what the Jews actually believed at the time, and what we believe now. There's no concept that a Gentile is unclean. And the separations between men and women are issues of respect, not issues of disrespect. And indeed, they're different cultures. But that's it. All right. Shoin Ganig. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment. I hope this recorded, because I've had issues doing this before. But I think it was worthwhile. Thank you.